How's everyone today? All right, we're coming on 11 o'clock. I'm just going to do some housekeeping and then we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for participating in this remote meeting for the board assistant briefing. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation, and we ask everyone to be patient. We have two formats for participation, the Zoom web app as well as teleconference. But before we begin, I want to review some guidelines and general instructions. Please silence other communication devices such as your cell or desk phone. This will ensure that we're not hearing any feedback, causing interruption during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants except for the committee members and the staff will be placed on mute by the host. That means you'll not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually, but after each agenda item that we'll announce a time for public comment. A little bit of Zoom instructions. If you'd like to make a public comment, click the raise hand button on the Zoom screen. This will signal to us that you'd like to provide a public comment and will be added to the list. If you're on your smartphone, you can also tap the raise hand button on the bottom of the screen. For those calling in with the phone line and you would like to make a public comment, dial *9, and then your name will be called when it's your turn to comment, and we'll unmute your line automatically. And please note, you can hang up or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I see we have pretty good attendance from board assistants across the board. So the first thing on our agenda is the agenda for the meeting next week on September 4th, the governing board meeting. And as usual, we'll start towards the end with the public hearings. So we have one public hearing, and that is more amendments to Rule 1111. Susan, you're on the line. Do you want to give a brief summary of where we are?
So there's two upcoming compliance dates for Rule 1111 on October 1st of this year that we're trying to provide some relief. There's one for the weatherized units and one for the installation of condensing and non-condensing furnaces in high altitude areas. And our suggestion is that our recommendation is to extend the compliance date 1 year to October 1st, 2021. The manufacturers have had some challenges due to COVID, traveling to complete the high altitude testing. And then they've all had to do some modifications to their operations in regards to social distancing, and it's resulted in some slowdowns in the development and commercialization of the weatherized units. So then there's two key issues that you'll probably hear at the board meeting. The first one is in regards to a sell-through provision for the weatherized units. So we're extending the compliance date 12 months. The request is to have an additional 60-day sell-through period beyond the 12 months. Manufacturers, 5 of the 7 manufacturers are going to have either commercial, residential, or commercial and residential weatherized units by April 1st, 2021. And so it gives them 6 months to manage their inventory. We don't think the additional 60 days is needed in terms of a sell-through provision. But that'll be one of the.
Susan, if I could just add to that sell-through provision, the original request at last, as of last stationary source committee meeting was a 6-month. We were proposing to extend the compliance date 6 months, and then the request was for an additional 6 months sell-through. And we're coming back saying, we're just going to give you 12 months extension versus 6 months. So it's even more flexible to be able to allow them to manage their inventory after they have the compliant unit. So no tracking, no reporting of non-compliant sales and looking at ship by dates. They can just have another 6 months to sell whatever they want, but they know there's a drop dead date at the end, so they have plenty of time to manage their inventory. Go ahead, Susan, I'm sorry.
Okay. So then the second issue is in regards to 40 nanogram per joule furnaces that would be paired with a dual fuel system. So a dual fuel system is a electric heat pump, and then it's paired with a gas furnace that provides backup heat when the temperature gets really cold. The set temperature is usually 32 degrees Fahrenheit. In most parts of Southern California, we don't reach those temperatures. In fact, one of the representatives from Johnson Controls had said that they had checked in Los Angeles, and the last time the temperature dropped below 32 degrees was in 1979. So staff is concerned about if we were to amend Rule 1111 to allow 40 nanogram per joule furnaces with dual fuel systems. We're concerned because it would be a rule relaxation by allowing this to be sold throughout the basin. Manufacturers and distributors have been selling and offering 14 nanogram per joule condensing and non-condensing furnaces sold as standalone furnaces and paired with heat pumps as a dual fuel system for almost a year now. This would be a departure from the approach in Rule 1111. So staff would like to focus on incentives for manufacturers or consumer rebates and focusing on encouraging the 14 nanogram per joule furnaces for high altitude and the weatherized where they're currently not available. And then also focusing on all electric heat pumps. And so we had talked about at the Station Resource Committee meeting a $1,000 rebate, and we're considering increasing that rebate amount for the all electric heat pump. That's where you'll get the greatest amount of NOx reductions. There's no current requirement for all electric heat pumps. We're thinking of also backing off on the 14 nanogram or rebate for 14 nanogram per joule dual fuel systems, because that's a current requirement today. And so the bigger NOx reduction will be from the all electric heat pump. Any questions?
Any questions from members of the group? Okay, thank you, Susan. So we'll move back to the first part of the board agenda. So this is back on page 2 of the draft agenda. So there's the minutes, and then item 2 is a set hearing for 1179.1. So Susan can also give just a brief summary of that.
Okay, so Rule 1179.1 is it'll be a rule for publicly owned treatment works, POTWs, and it's essentially taking all of the combustion equipment for engines, turbines, boilers, and heaters, and then putting them all under Rule 1179.1. And the reason why we decided to do this, we did a full BART analysis on all of the equipment. We feel that the publicly owned treatment works as well as landfills is another rule that's coming in a couple of months for landfills, but they are different and they are unique. They have the biogas digester gas. They have unique challenges with dealing with that type of fuel. Also because their funding is different than a privately owned company. So we decided to move all the POTWs and all of the equipment. So it's a more of an industry specific type of rule, but it'll be for all of their combustion equipment. We've been working very closely with the Southern California Association of POTWs, having meetings with them to discuss all the issues. I think hopefully we'll be all buttoned up and there'll be no key remaining issues. The one limit that's going to be lowered is for turbines, but they're allowed to meet that limit at the time of replacement. Any questions?
Again, this is just a set hearing. The rule should be heard in October.
Yeah, Phil, actually, I made a mistake. The turbine requirement, there is one turbine requirement. It's not for a time of replacement. We actually removed that requirement. The requirement is for existing turbines, but they agreed to the limit that we're establishing.
Okay, any questions for Susan? All right, moving on. item 3 on page 3. Is Naveen with us? Anyone from TAO to handle Matt and Naveen's items?
Phil, Naveen's trying to get on, so you may want to come back to him.
Okay, so let's skip, Ron, to then item 7, which is your item, Ron, and we'll come back to Matt and Naveen's items.
Good morning. This is Ron Moskowitz, Chief Information Officer. It's a standard request to amend contracts for system development services. These services are currently needed to enhance system functionality and provide additional automation for improving productivity. The systems include class and PeopleSoft enhancements, VW mitigation phase 3, mobile enhancements for the gridded hourly air quality reporting and source test tracking systems maintenance. The funds are available in the budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ron? Seeing none, still not seeing Naveen. So we'll move on to, now we're on page 5, item 8. This is Derek's item.
Thanks, Phil. So item number 8 is we're requesting to get permission to issue an RFP for our state legislative representation in Sacramento. Their contracts expire on December 31st. So we need to go out and for bids. That's all. Available for any questions.
I have a quick question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, who's our current contractor or lobbyist?
So we have 3 contractors. We have California Advisors, we have Resolute, and we also have Joe Gonzalez and Sons.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Quick question, Eric. So if the RFP goes out, it'll be a month. It's going to be how long? What's the timing? Because if the contract expires in December, so it's going to be kind of a compressed.
Yes. So, if the board approves it, we'll issue the RFP that day. They have 30 days to respond. We will do a review of the proposals in October, probably mid-October, and then it'll go to admin in either admin or ledge. I'm not sure which one, but it went to admin this time, so I imagine it's going to go back to admin. Go to admin in November and board in early December.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Derek on 8?
Phil, Naveen's on now.
Well, since Derek's speaking, why don't we go on to 9 and then we'll go back. So Derek, you have the next one too.
Sure, thank you. So this item is to, based on board member Delgado's recommendation at the September board meeting to triple the August board meeting to triple the education programs. This item is exactly to do that. I know that there was strong support from the board for the educational programs at that meeting, and this is for the high school program. We are going to expand it to middle school program, but it's also to fund the CAPES program, which is meant for the elementary school program. We're going to triple the amount of schools, high schools, to 300 and middle schools, and then additionally we're going to do 20 elementary schools. Like we did originally, we're going to break it up based on population of the different counties and allocate those numbers to the number of schools for those counties. Now available to answer any questions.
Derek, is there any kind of, as far as the county distribution, what mechanism or what's the process to identify those schools that'll participate?
Sure. So we do have a set of criteria. There's 5 criteria. They are, one is the first one is AB 617. If they're located in the AB 617 community, The second is if they are in the AB 2588 community, hot toxic hotspots. And then third, SB 935, which is environmental justice community. And then there's two others that off the top of my head, I don't recall. And Monica, if you can help me answer that question. Monica, Kim, what are the other two criteria?
Sure, and sorry, there's a lot of construction going on, so it's very noisy. But it's also makes for and goods movement.
And do they apply directly to the district? I mean, if a school district or a specific school was interested, how do they go about to try to access this program?
So if the board members or board assistants know of schools that fit the criteria, that'd be very helpful if they can let us know about those. But we have the contractor is going to be reaching out to the school districts that at least have schools that fit the criteria. Now, if, say, for instance, in San Bernardino County, we don't have enough of the schools, because now San Bernardino and the other districts, except for LA County, they're going to get 60 high schools. And I believe, is it 20 middle schools or is it 10 middle schools no, it's actually, I'm sorry, it's all one. So they'll get 60 schools. And if we don't have enough and the schools don't meet those first 5 criteria, we're going to open it up to other school districts that don't fit that criteria.
Okay.
Derek, do you mind explaining the funding for this, because it's
sure. So the funding that is being proposed is that coming from the settlement money, and 20% of the settlement monies get diverted over to the foundation. What was the name of the foundation? The Lung and Cancer Foundation. Is that the name of it, Joe?
Health effects of air pollution.
Health effects.
right? And that's
I'm sorry, health effects.
And just to clarify, this is what we have usually been doing to the Health Effects Foundation, which funds the brain and lung tumor research that we've been doing. But first you get $4 million, and then anything over $4 million, 20% of that went to that program. And the recommendation is to now use that to fund the increase to this high school program and middle and elementary schools.
And that's where the funding will continue to come from. I mean, are we seeing an increased amount coming that's over 4 million? Is that what's happening?
Sujata can answer that, or Joe.
Mark, yeah, that's a good question. You don't know that from year to year. So we have one of the recommended actions in this board letter that is saying that, if that doesn't happen, then we will bring it back to the board to decide where the funding will come from to fund these contracts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Yeah, Derek, I wasn't writing fast enough. The second criteria, the AB subnumber related toxic hotspots.
Right, AB 2588.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions for Derek? All right. So then I think Naveen is still on. Is that right? We'll go back to item 3.
Yes, Phil, and my apologies for technical issues on my end. So item number 3 is regarding AB 617 incentive funds. And a couple of months ago, we submitted a grant disbursement request for Year 3 Community Air Protection Program incentive funds to ARB at approximately about $70 million that has been received. So this particular board item is to adopt a resolution that commits the use of those funds for projects that are approved in the community emission reduction plans, mainly for mobile source projects, as well as some stationary source projects that include air filtration for schools and metal finishing facilities, for example. About 4.4 million out of that 70 million will be used to support administrative costs for implementing those programs. So if there's any questions, I can address those.
No questions for Naveen on that? All right. Are you going to handle all Matt's items going forward,
Yes,
Naveen?
yes, I will.
Okay.
So item number 4 is a little more complicated. So this represents almost $38 million in funds from US EPA, about $500,000 from their Clean Air Technology Initiative program, and then the remainder, $37.5 million or so from their Targeted Airshed Grant program. So we were pretty successful in receiving a large amount of those funds available this year. And basically they'll be used in 3 main areas that represent some of the highest NOx emissions in our basin. So the one of the projects, $500,000 from the Clean Air Technology Fund, will be used to supplement a previous project approved by the board known as Volvo Lights. And that's a fairly large, almost $90 million project. This $500,000 will add some additional trucks under that program to deploy at our local fleets that are in the Inland Empire as well as port operations. In addition to that Volvo Lights program, the next step of the Volvo program is known as Switch On project. And $20 million out of that airshed grant will be used for deploying 70 additional trucks that are not the pre-commercial or demonstration trucks, but really commercial ready trucks. And this will be deployed with local fleets as well that are in the disadvantaged communities for the most part, especially in the Inland Empire. And that'll also provide some port operations. Another project as a part of this targeted airshed grant is about $11.4 million going towards a retrofit technology, a selective catalytic reduction demonstration project on an ocean-going vessel. So the goal is to really demonstrate up to a 75% NOx reduction when those ocean-going vessels are in low, low speed operations adjacent to our ports. And the San Pedro ports, both Port of Long Beach and LA, are also supporting this effort with some funding as well. The last project under this US EPA TAG funds or Targeted Airshed Grant funds is $6 million towards 5 fuel cell buses that'll be deployed as Sunlight Transit buses, Sunlight Transit that serves the Coachella Valley, including the Eastern Coachella Valley that's designated as a Year 2 community under AB 617. These 5 fuel cell buses will displace 5 existing CNG buses. So it'll be truly zero emission. They'll supplement, or they'll be fueled using a brand new electrolyzer or renewable hydrogen station that's been placed at Sunline as well. So we're pretty excited about this implementation. Overall, the request for the South Coast AQMD funding represents about 5% of total project cost. So that's some pretty significant leveraging from US EPA, the ports, as well as private funds that'll be supplementing these 4 projects that I highlighted. And we'll get about $1 million or so in administrative funds to support some of these or implementing some of these programs. And I apologize for not being such a brief summary, but there's a lot of items, so I can certainly provide additional details on any one of the 4 projects that I highlighted.
I had a quick question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was hesitant to go there.
Getting some background.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yes, Andy.
The 70 commercial clean trucks, are those battery electric or hybrid, or what technology are they, and what are they going to serve, like drayage?
I
or
apologize.
short haul,
So
or-
all of the Volvo trucks, the Volvo Switch On projects will be battery electric trucks.
Okay. So for like drayage and short haul and stuff like that?
Precisely.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else for Naveen on that item? Okay.
I'm sorry, Phil. This is Ben. I stepped away for a second. Naveen, point of personal curiosity on the fuel cell buses. Who's the manufacturer, and are those ready for delivery? How soon will that implementation take place?
Those buses will be New Flyer buses, and they're similar to buses that were already deployed at Orange County Transit Authority and AC Transit in Northern California. So it'll just be additional New Flyer buses that will be deployed there.
Thank you. In the early 2000s, I was on the board of Foothill Transit when Ballard was promising that they'd have a fully deliverable bus in 5 years, and that never happened. So, so I'm glad to see that we have fuel cell buses available now. So.
Yeah, certainly the ARB's innovative clean transit bus regulation is accelerating this, but the buses that you can see are quite high in terms of dollar value at this point compared to CNG or even battery electric buses.
All right, any other questions for Naveen on that item? Seeing none, Naveen, number 5.
So the California Natural Gas Vehicle Partnership is a fairly routine item that we staff brings to the board every couple of years. Basically, just some background, South Coast AQMD is one of the founding members of the California Natural Gas Vehicle Partnership more than 15 years ago, and has provided administrative support for the meetings and budgeting and the whole partnership process. Staff is basically recognizing the membership dues that are up to $170,000 total, including $25,000 from South Coast AQMD towards those membership dues, and then also seeking board authorization for a payment of $192,000 towards a communication and outreach plan that's led by Gladstein, Yadros, and Associates, as directed by the steering committee of the partnership. And as the board letter includes, there are sufficient funds available in that particular special fund for the partnership that the South Coast AQMD monitors. So if there's any questions, I can certainly address those as well.
Any questions? Seeing none, one more, Naveen, number 6.
Yeah. So this particular item is for the Aliso Canyon Supplemental Environmental Project. About a little more than a year ago, the governing board recognized $7.1 million as a part of this supplemental environmental project to install air filtration systems in schools with Los Angeles or within Los Angeles County. So staff has worked closely with the county and city attorneys as well as the school districts and identified 56 schools where air filtration systems can be installed, including 5 years of replacement filters under this particular funding source. All of these schools are located fairly adjacent to major traffic thoroughfares. 53 of the 56 schools are under Los Angeles Unified School District, with the other 3 in Compton. And then 10 of those 56 are located within year 1 and year 2 AB 617 communities. So that's an added plus for this funding as well. And then the action really is to transfer these funds that were previously recognized into a specific Aliso Canyon air filtration fund to support tracking of the expenditures specifically for this effort. Out of the 7.1 million, a little more than $350,000 will be recognized into the general fund for administrative support of these projects. So again, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to address those.
Phil, I just want to say that again, just because if the supervisor were here, she would say it as well, as we're interested obviously in having these kinds of arrangements in some of the areas in the Inland Empire. Of course, most specifically at or near the rail yard, and you know, being a part of the AB 617 area, this is certainly something that she's been asking, and you know, so continue to nudge Matt and yourself in finding the funds to do similar projects within San Bernardino County.
Phil, did you want me to address that, or?
Yeah, I haven't seen the list of schools, so if you have any.
So this particular pot of money is only for LA County because of the Aliso Canyon settlement. But under the AB 617 program for San Bernardino Muscoe, there's an item for air filtration for schools as well as residences, and we're going to be doing some pilot programs in that community under funding from AB 617. We're trying to work out the details with Phil's staff, but we're certainly looking at funding some residential as well as some schools within that community under the AB 617 funds.
Okay, well, when we get to item number 14, maybe we can identify some funds for that.
Yeah, well, as Naveen mentioned in a earlier item, for the AB 617 incentive funding, air filtration was specifically called out as an eligible type of project. So there should be some funding for that in all 5 or AB 617 communities that we have.
Right.
So there is
No, I just wanted to make sure that we keep that in the forefront, that is something that the supervisor's been, acutely interested in and would like to continue to see progress there. And I get this particular money has been earmarked for LA County, but we're hoping to find more that can make its way east.
And the other thing to know is while we have considerable experience in doing this in schools, we do not yet have a lot of experience in doing this in residences. So if we're going to start doing that, which, the steering committee in San Bernardino, requested, we need to sort of go slow and figure that out. There's some other issues that come up when you go into people's houses. So
thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that item for Naveen? Seeing none, we're back to bottom of page 5, item 10. Is Faye on the line or?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, good morning. This item is to fill the alternate medical member position on the hearing board. We had 2 candidates that interviewed with the administrative committee, and the committee is recommending the appointment of Dr. Karen Lee to that position.
I saw the interview. So, and I guess he can't officially accept, but is he obviously, is he going to be able to accept that position, or is he indicated that would be he'd like to do that?
Yes, it's she, and I've spoken to her, and she is still willing to serve.
Sorry, yes, there were 2. That's right, she. Thank you.
Any other questions for Faye on this? All right, we're on to item 11, which is the routine MSRC item. Anything there, Naveen, to point out?
I can provide a quick little summary, but it's really funding towards major events such as the Dodger Stadium shuttle. We're just shifting, or the committee decided to shift by 1 year funding because there were going to be no fans at the stadium this year. And then also there was some implementation of near zero emission trucks under 2 governing board approved projects. One is the market acceleration program and the other one, the trade down program. So staff recommended to MSRC to bifurcate those funding. So $1 million will be going towards the market acceleration program and $3 million towards the trade down program that actually involves trucks for independent owner operators as well. And then the last major item was SCAG's last mile project for zero emission vehicles. So those are the 3 main items that were part of that discussion, but I can certainly provide any additional questions or answers to any additional questions.
Anything else for Naveen on that one? Seeing none. Okay, so the remainder of page 6 are items 12 through 16. Again, these are receive and file reports, but Mark, did you want to mention something on 14?
Just really quickly, I was just curious, 1.7 million kind of jumped out at me. I just was wondering if that was, I know it was related to the Sherwin-Williams settlement. I didn't know if that was specifically earmarked, and if what exactly, this was a big number, what might have been, how that all settled out as far as what they did and how they moved forward.
So this settlement was for violations of architectural coatings rules, as well as our solvent rule 1143. Basically, the company was selling denatured alcohol as a compliant, well, they were selling it under an exemption, but it didn't really fit in the exemption. So they've agreed to stop selling that material here in the South Coast. The penalty, of course, we don't speak publicly about all the considerations that go into that, but it had to do in part with the amount of excess emissions that you see from the amount of VOC that was emitted by the non-compliant products. As far as any designation for the penalty, the settlement agreement itself did not include any restrictions or limitations on the use of the penalty. I would point out that it's still rather early in the year, and we do budget a certain amount of penalties to support our budget, I believe. So it might be preferable to wait until we've gotten a little more penalties under our belt that might be needed to support the budget before trying to go above and beyond and use that for other projects. But Sujata, could you speak to that? Do we have reliance on penalties in the budget? You're on mute.
Thank you, Barbara. Sorry about that. We do budget about 5 million in our budget from penalties. And then above that, for now, I think the board letter that you just saw earlier is going to use some of that for the WAM, et cetera, program. So, you know, it just depends, like I said, how much comes in.
Okay, that's fine. I noticed that it was a big amount. I didn't remember the exact number, and it was 5 million that was in the budget. So I didn't know how close that put us to the anticipated budgeted amount, and then, you know, if there was any specific earmarks for those dollars.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions on those items 12 through 16? Okay, on to page 7, items 17 through 19. Any questions on those?
Phil, on the rule, the forecast, rule and control forecast, that's coming. I mean, I know I mentioned it at the last, I think it was stationary source. You said it was, you know, would be coming shortly. Are we close to having that? And is there anything major that we can anticipate seeing?
I don't think there were a lot of changes this month. Susan, do you remember the changes? I think there was just one, right?
We added rule 1146 to December to remove an ammonia slip limit that's going to be addressed through Reg 13. And then there was another one, I think it was 445.
445, is that what you said?
I think it was, I think.
This is the board assistant briefing. I think I hear.
Yeah, I'd have to go back. There was one other minor change.
Okay, that's fine.
They don't want me.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on those? All right, then the rest of page 7, it's the board calendar, the committee reports, 21 through 26. Any questions on those? All right.
Phil, it was 2202. That was moved to TBD. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's our ride share requirement rule, our carpooling rule, and kind of the carpooling world has been upended recently, and we have some ideas for amendments, but we're going to have to wait till this settles out to really do any analysis on that rule. Okay, so page 8, items 27, 28, any questions? There's a pretty big board meeting going on right now, 2 major rulemakings on at-birth and low NOx trucks. So some of us, probably Naveen also, were listening in on that, and that's why we were a little bit late. Okay, so then Amir, item 29.
Yes, thank you, Phil. Good morning, Amir Deresbakhsh, DEO for Engineering and Permitting. This is the second of the 2 reports that we bring to the board every year to demonstrate that our new source review program meets the state and federal offsetting requirements for sources that obtain the emission offsets from our internal bank. This final analysis shows that for calendar year 2018, our offsets account maintained a positive balance for all pollutants that we track. Also, in addition, this report shows the cumulative net emission increases during calendar year 2018 and the projected cumulative net emission increases for calendar years 2019 and 2020. Again, for each air contaminants that we track remain below the levels identified in our Rule 1315. And therefore, we can continue to issue permits to sources that rely on our internal bank for offsets. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Amir? Okay, Jill, I don't know if there's much to say about our monthly outlook, but go ahead.
Well, this report always trails a little bit because of the timing of the board meeting as being the first Friday of the month. So the month doesn't end until next Monday. So we will be pulling together all of the month summary statistics and updating all of the graphs, charts for all the economic indicators very early next week, and hope to get this out to everybody possibly Tuesday afternoon, but more likely Wednesday. So we'll let you have the updates then. No major changes or surprises, but we're kind of continuing some of the trends that we've been seeing.
Any questions for Jill? All right, so that completes the governing board agenda item. We can take public. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
One quick question, Barbara, do you have any, I know you can't talk about anything specific, but is the closed session anticipated to go long, or is anything, that
Yeah, and appreciate your asking because I was going to jump in. We will have several items for closed session, including litigation and I believe labor negotiations. So
okay.
There'll be a closed session.
There'll be a closed session that'll take whatever time. Okay.
Yeah, hard to say.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's a good question, Mark. If there's no other committee member questions on the agenda, we'll open it up for public comment. Do we have any public comment on the governing board agenda item?
There's no public comment.
All right, so any other comments from the group that they wanted to bring up? Okay, and then finally, general public comment. We'll open that up for general public comment one more time. Seeing no hands. Is that right, Ron?
That's correct.
Okay, so that'll bring our meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to the meeting next Friday.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.